traceless enlightenment could be said to be when it's clear that all that remains is the conventional. And the conventional is ultimately illusory. And yet, paradoxically, we can fully inhabit it because there's nothing identifying with it. So this is full of paradox, but it's also liberation. We're liberated from the fundamental illusions, the illusion of separation, the illusion of separate identity, the illusion of subject-object split, the illusion of thought defining our experience, the illusion of identifying with fixation, the illusion of obstruction. So the key to seeing illusion as illusion so thoroughly that we no longer need to call it out, and thus we can simply inhabit, joyfully inhabit this conventional life. The key to this really rests on anatta, or seeing through the identifying structure, seeing through the identifying mechanism. This all comes down to identity. It's difficult to confront the identity structure directly, especially early on. However, something resonates deeply within us often when we hear a description of what it is to be free of identity. When we hear descriptions, pointers, and so forth, they can be catalytic. We can have these kind of glimpses or momentary experiences that don't stabilize. And that's because, again, the truth is resonant. At any level of identification, at any level of delusion, we may find ourselves resonating with something that's truly transcendent of the illusion, or the illusions, the layered illusions that we're suffering from in that moment. So the transmission can happen, the resonance can happen really at any moment, any time, any place, any stage of realization. But the illusions aren't dispelled by that, because the identity structure, or the identifying mechanism, to put it as both a noun and a verb, they're very adaptable. And so we have to actually dissolve the collection of distortions that themselves have defense mechanisms that work together to reify that self. And to reify the self may not feel like reifying the self. It may be reifying consciousness. It may be reifying being. It may be reifying God. It may be reifying awareness. But that reification, that tendency to solidify, that tendency to summate, that tendency to extrapolate, fabricate, on and on, that is what identity feels like. That is what identifying is doing. There's nothing doing that. And we don't need to get up in our head about why it happens or how it happens. What we need to do is confront it layer by layer. And there are a lot of ways to approach this. But primarily the approach, and it's reasonably nonlinear, primarily the approach is confronting whatever is appearing in the moment. So in this moment, what is it in your experience that feels separate? In this moment, what is it in your experience that feels heavy? Just feel into it. What is it in this moment that feels stuck? Go right to the center of that. What is it in your experience right now that feels like a center? A center of the body, a center of the room, a center of the universe, a center of your experience, the central figure in your life. Where's your evidence for that center? Go to it. So whatever is appearing, we can investigate in this way. And we start by investigating thoughts, conceptual thoughts. Thoughts that say, I am this kind of person, I came from this place, I am this many years old, I have these tendencies, these are my struggles, these are my challenges. Identifying with those kinds of thoughts can be really imprisoning. And as we question those thoughts, we start to see that there's something, there's some, well, I'll say a substratum of thought. There's something that is not divided by thought at all. It's not bound by thought. It's not contingent upon thought. It's just there, always there. This is to realize wholeness, to realize being, to realize knowingness, to realize the oceanic nature of mere being. And with this, we break the spell of thought. Maybe not permanently, but we damage it for sure. We injure the mechanism of identifying with thought somehow. And what this does is it opens up some space for us. It opens up a crack, a chink in the armor. We can see through, we can see beyond the confines of thought. And now we're starting to let a whole new dimension of experience in, or we're starting to access a new dimension of experience. And then it gets to work on your life. It starts rearranging things and putting you in situations to experience certain triggers you may not have experienced otherwise. It also brings a lot of repressed emotion into consciousness. This is shadow work, and it's part of the deal, par for the course. And here, this is where we really start to confront the more deeply buried fixations, the more obscured beliefs that are not so conceptual. They're more visceral. Again, what I mentioned before, the belief that I am separate from everything, the belief that experience is fundamentally divided into subject and object, that the only way to experience is through a subject-object arrangement. That's an illusion, but we can confront it now because that solid stream of thought that feels like a timeline is broken. It's not binding like it was before. Maybe occasionally it catches us, but it's not binding, not continuously binding. So we can, again, break through to something that is beyond thought, beyond concepts, beyond the binding of the mind. And from there, that's where the confrontation is that I'm talking about. We can confront these more fundamental beliefs, these more fundamental assumptions that we may have never even looked at closely enough to question them. Like, again, reality being divided up into different objects, different spaces, different times. That seems so obvious when we're lost in thought that we wouldn't even think to confront it. But now we can. And that's how this works. So this process, in one sense, is laid out beautifully, although I'm not saying it's laid out by anybody, but it seems to go along these lines for most people. And the more buy-in you have for the process itself, meaning the more you trust it, the more you trust that you're not here to suffer, that these fundamental illusions are causing you some kind of distress, and that you can confront them, you can look into them, and you can release yourself from them. Trusting that makes this go a whole lot smoother. So be willing to go as deep as this needs to go. Be willing to look at anything that appears, that feels stuck, fixed, heavy, that feels like a center, that feels like something opaque, unclear. be willing to confront it. By confront, I simply mean square up with it. Don't ignore it. Don't use your mind to bypass the discomfort of it. Rather, come into contact with it. Feel it. Investigate a bit. This will take you a long way, this willingness to investigate. And again, this is a reasonably nonlinear process in that whatever needs to be confronted or inquired into or experienced or inhabited will just appear for you right now in the only place there ever is, which is right now. And again, having broken that spell of the timeline of thought allows you to recognize what is right here, to feel it. And again, the serendipity of it is that will bring a lot of repressed material into consciousness. Not always comfortable, but it's what you came for. That's what this is all about ultimately. And it won't last forever. Meaning we go through a very heavy period typically of shadow work, shadow material, and then things tend to calm down a lot on the other side of that. Doesn't mean you'll never experience any shadow, but it means that you can live from a baseline of joy, spontaneity, peace, freedom, simplicity. And